Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast is Critical Blast.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Dean Zachary, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we go beyond politics, beyond calculation, and beyond the big two. Join us each and every Wednesday. Don't miss out.
Hi, I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're live with Silverline Comics talking well-rounded characters with your host, Sid Williams.
Hello, everybody in internet land, and thank you, Tim. Tim is on the West Coast with the Silverline Orchestra tonight, and we have a great lineup of guests and a good writer-to-artist ratio. So we will be seeing some artisting while writers talk, and we will talk to the artists as well. And we do have a review segment tonight, happily. So lots of variety going as we progress this evening. And as mentioned, we will be discussing crafting well-rounded characters. And we will hear from the artists and get artist thoughts as well in contemplating crafting great characters for comics. So thanks to everyone joining us on Twitch, on Facebook Live, and back on YouTube, and staying for the moment on YouTube. So happy to be here. We are Silverline Comics from Silverline Studios, which is virtual and scattered across various cities in North America and places outside of the U.S. as well. Although I don't know that anybody on the stream is there. We will begin with introductions. And the virtual Silverline sofa this evening is packed, happily. And I will go in the order they are appearing on my screen and let everyone introduce themselves after I've introduced myself, of course. I'm Sidney Williams, and I am a writer for Silverline and a novelist and short story writer as well. And have been doing things with Silverline in its various iterations Since almost too far back to remember, and sometimes our memory is fuzzy on things that I've done with Silverline. And with that said, let's progress. And Tommy is the first person on my virtual sofa. Tell us who you are and what you do, Tommy.
My name is Thomas Florimonti. I have been a comic book creator for about 30 some odd years, just early 90s, mostly known for inking, but I can do penciling and coloring, and I write my own stuff, so maybe I can help talk a little bit of writing, but I'm not a writer. But right now I'm currently inking a book called Trumps, based off the card game, for Silverline, and I'll be inking some Trumps pages in the background, so we'll be able to see a little bit of that.
See Trumps come to life or come to greater definition as you ink.
Yep.
Next on my spot on the sofa, my view of the sofa, is Tim TK. Tim?
Hi, everyone. I am Tim TK. I am the associate editor at Silverline, and my face is disappearing into the monitor because my mic is to the side. So I'll do this. I am currently editing 2 titles, doing Redacted on Redacted with another thing here at Silverline, and help run the Craft blog series online.
Nice. Thank you. And next up is Scott. And Scott's working on various things for Silverline, including some writing. Tell us what you're up to, Scott.
My name's Scott Wakefield. I am handling publicity for Silverline as best I can. I don't have a long list of comic book bona fides, but I'm creating Steam Patriots, a steampunk retelling of the Revolutionary War that's coming sometime from Silverline. And I have a degree in writing, and I'll hopefully be able to offer some gems of wisdom tonight.
Cool. Thank you. And next up on my sofa is Mickey Clausen. Mickey, tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Mickey Clausen. I'm an inker and colorist. I've been in the business since way back in '85. Currently, I'm coloring Twilight for Silverline and Sniper and Rook. And other than that, I got a lot of other side projects, but that's what I'm doing for Silverline. Hopefully some inking soon, hint.
Cool. Twilight Grim, the recently successfully completed Kickstarter. So, and issue 2 in development for Twilight Grim. So great. Thanks, Mickey. Next up, I have C. Michael Lanning. Hello. Tell us what you're up to. Oh, you're still muted, Chris.
I'm C. Michael Lanning. I'm a penciler for one of Sydney's projects, Something Big. And that's what I got right now.
Cool. And we should, as always, we are perpetually going to be clarifying Something Big is the title. It is something big.
It is something
to
big.
us, but also something big. So we'll be seeing some pages come to life from that.
And I'm looking forward to selling that. That's a big selling point right there.
Yeah, it's something big. Next, I think my system just reconfigured, but Brent Larson is next. Brent, introduce yourself.
I'm Brent Larson. I am the creator and writer on the Silverline title Kalis, which is about 3/4 of the way through inks on issue 3. So
cool. Two issues are out and very successfully kickstarted. So time to for people to think about getting on the Kalis train, so to speak. Alex is next. I don't know if Alex is going to speak tonight. He is muted, but Alex Gallimore, penciler extraordinaire, is at work there, and we may see some sticky notes from Alice.
I don't think he has a microphone, so maybe that's why he didn't say anything.
He'll be communicating by sticky note, and there we go. And
I was going to say, or maybe he's just messing with you.
Yeah, could be. But anyway, Alex is there. You will see great pencils developing on via his screen. And I believe, last but not least, on our sofa tonight is John Medic. John, welcome. Tell us what you do.
Hey, I'm the guy who's always running in last minute, always late for everything. I am a proud editor at Silverline, number one fan of Silverline from back in the day, brought into the fold, part of the family, and my main book is Sniper and Rook. As Mickey mentioned, he's going to be doing some coloring on some of our existing issues and hopefully toss some stuff to ink as well. And other big projects coming out from Silverline that's a little too early to talk about, but are definitely in the works.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Glad to have everyone here tonight. And we are going to be sharing C. Michael Lanning's screen some tonight, too. And we'll try to take some art breaks. And we do, as I mentioned, we do have a review tonight as well. And we'll cue that up in a while. There's C. Michael's work showing up there. That is some material from Something Big. And
I will also say that right now the YouTube comments coming through the restream into my OBS are all sorts of jacked up. So if you try to talk to me on YouTube or try asking the stream a question on YouTube, it may get hidden. So questions would be best received on Facebook or Twitch, but give it a shot if you want to.
Cool. And we do definitely want to hear from you. So if you can get through Twitch or Facebook, send us questions as we go. And I will say, C. Michael is working on a page from Something Big, and I think we're going to talk about some characters from Something Big tonight. So I think we're safe in saying it is a modern noir parody, fun, Lovecraftian, science fiction, mystery, adventure, a lot of things rolling together there, and see some panels from that coming to life. And not sure, Alex, a lot of things rolling together there, and see some panels from that coming to life. Okay. Anyway, a little reverb there. Well, let's get started with our questions, and we'll throw these out to the group, and hopefully provide some information that will be useful for comics writers in development, in thinking about making strong characters, crafting strong characters for the comics page. As we've talked about in some episodes, great action is fun, but it is more meaningful if there is a character that we really feel something for, experiencing that action. We don't Roland likes to stress that we're indie here, but history of comics, if we look back especially to Marvel in the 60s, that's where we really started to see Spider-Man and Captain America have real personalities and real problems outside of their superhero existence. And I think that really, fueled a lot of popularity for comics. And so we'll think about hopefully tonight how we invest characters with some of the things that make them meaningful. And the first question on the official question sheet is, what do you think makes a character interesting in a comic? What appeals to you? First and foremost, guys, as a reader, and anyone, this question is for anyone, artist or writer that wants to voice something.
I'll go ahead and I'll throw in. That's an easy one, so I'll take the softball questions. For both a reader and a writer standpoint, for an engaging character, they have to be someone that's relatable on some level, both hero and villain, not even talking anti-hero, but there needs to be something relatable to connect you to them, to make you care about them and their adventures, trials, and tribulations.
Something that humanizes even a superhuman character, I think we might say. Other thoughts on that front?
The other easy answer is if they have a flaw, and that goes with being relatable, because we're all human, and which I think that's why Superman has such a problem. They always have to give him something that can hurt him, but if you can have flaws as well, again, it's just more with the being relatable.
Yeah, and I think we'll delve into flaws a bit more later, but yeah, and if the flaw is tied to the central plot in some way, I think that that tends to make for a more textured and meaningful story. And a lot of times I don't know that, as we're watching something, we're sitting and dissecting that, but it's nice if it's there beneath the surface and we kind of feel it again. Dean Koontz said in one essay that we will identify with the protagonist for a while just because that's the lead character, but eventually, if it's gonna be meaningful, we need to make some connection and realize, that there is some humanity there, and that there is more than just the character standing with the hands on hips and everything like that. Uh, um, other thoughts on what is meaningful to you and what you've responded to in characters?
I don't know. I like characters that have internal conflict. They might have moral issues on certain things. Everybody's got a dark side and a good side. To me, an internal conflict with them trying to decide if it's ethical, non-ethical, what you're doing makes them a little more interesting. If you look at him and you can go and say, well, this is what he's going to do next, but something comes out of left field, then you're like, what's with this person? He's a little more interesting than you think because you never expected him to do what he did.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then you got to start thinking, where's this guy really coming from?
Mm-hmm. I think most stories do have, inherent ethical quandaries, and certainly superhero stories do, because we have these characters that are invested with such great powers and everything, and so that underlying texture again, I think, adds meaning and depth, certainly. Brent, thoughts?
To tell you the truth, something I really look for in comics that I read is if I like a character, if they are likable. And even if they're not likable, they're at least more likable than everyone else around them. They call it I call it the Godfather effect, basically. I mean, Michael Corleone, his story is him getting worse and worse, and yet he's surrounded by people that are worse than he is. When I think about the comic stories that really have resonated with me the most, half the time I can't even remember what it's about, but I can remember that I liked the character. I liked that they were maybe caught in an emotional moment and they responded, or there was a time where they felt really unsure of themselves. And I know I think a lot of us are saying the same thing. I will relate to that as a person, but I won't just relate. I mean, I do plenty of bad stuff too, so I can relate to those guys. But when I see someone in a comic that I like, and I think I would like to be like that character, then I will want to get behind that character and see what happens to that character. So.
Yeah, and I think often there is something likable about the worst person, and or about people we don't like. Often we'll say, well, that's a good trait. And the flip side of that, I think, is you can have somebody that is a nice person that has done things that are outstanding things or whatever, and yet there will be someone who has had conflict with them, and there'll be somebody that doesn't like them. There's something, outside in the real world. I mean, Steve Jobs certainly made a lot of people mad, even though he created things that changed all our lives, and devices that many of us are using tonight to communicate. And so the more we can, I think about that kind of texture and the good and the evil in each person, that certainly goes to strengthen the meaning of the work and everything. Again, Roland doesn't like to talk about comics from those two big companies that we hear a lot about. But I got a Comixology version of a comic of a favorite issue of mine as a child from one of those companies. And, had not read the comic in years and remembered aspects of it, and of course remembered more as I read it. But the first several pages were focusing on the main character and the hero, and some of his introspection and some of his contemplation of his place in the world and everything. And then the villain showed up and things took off from there. And the great fight scene, I remember, showed up. But, looking at it through my adult eyes and my, contemporary, having studied writing theory and everything eyes, I'm going, wow, he is doing a lot here. The writer is doing a lot here to put this character in his place, in his time, and then looking at his personal life as well, and some of his personal problems, his problems with his love interest. And then, we get on to the problems with the larger agency that he works for and things like that. Tommy, any thoughts from you on characters and what makes them memorable for you?
Tommy's muted.
Tommy, you're muted.
No, I'm not. See, I'm not muted. See,
he's nice. He's just messing with us.
I was doing the joke we were playing earlier. No, I'm always drawn to the bad guys. I like an interesting bad guy in the stories. So generally I kind of, in my mind, I know the bad guy is generally going to lose for the most part, and I always kind of like to see how he evolves to losing, I guess. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but like all the characters that I write in my books, I always try to make them fun, but they're the bad guy, and so you guys are the writers. I just when I do my own writing, it's more for just the fun of it, kind of a thing. So
yeah. But I am definitely interested in what you respond to as a reader as well, because I think we need to take those things into account when we craft stories. And definitely wanted to hear from you on that. Well, let's move on to the second question, which is, and which will be a more writerly question. Where do you begin thinking about a character when you sit down and you say, all right, I'm going to create a character for a story? Where do I begin? Any thoughts, guys?
I am both as a writer, editor, and reader, viewer, consumer. I'm a fan of the rule of threes, and like all writing prescription, take it with a grain of salt. But I like that in traits as well. The character should have, I feel like, 3 dominating traits. So when I sit down and create a character, I think of their backbone, besides their career, what their career is in the universe, where chosen one is a valid job option. But I have some nifty little tools, which hopefully it doesn't cut out. Oh, it does. Okay. But it's the character trait thesaurus. That's like a 5-book compendium. And I don't leaf through it every time I write a character or as I'm writing the entire dialogue, but sometimes I'll just figure out what's one strength with their job, what is the one direct negative, and then what's something that's hyper relatable, what's a hobby they might have that a reader would find humorous, or they're like, oh, I see myself on the page now. Since a lot of times people buy a comic to find themselves in the character, not necessarily because they were involved in the plot points. For example, writing a character who is a careered person, their main purpose is their dedication to one cause. We strip their away so that the dedication actually comes from their negative aspect, so it's more obsession. So when purpose gets stripped away, it becomes obsession, and then the reader is sort of like, oh, they're not nice right now. But when dedication is being fulfilled and it's a positive trait, then it's more commitment and loyalty and things we're always told to admire in a person. And then for the heck of it, maybe they like cricket, and then some kid who plays cricket is like, oh, that's cool. I have never seen a cricket character before in this role. And so that's, I always like to start with the backbone and what is the driving relatability, and then plop them into the plot from there, rather than trying to pull everything around the plot, but figuring out where they fit naturally.
I think, and I think it's interesting, and often a story will be taking somebody out of their comfortable environment. Every story takes them out of their comfortable environment for whatever, to confront whatever problem or go on whatever journey is going to be there. But that's a good point, that a trait that might be a positive in one setting and that drives them forward in their work or whatever might not be a positive trait in another situation. So. On a desert island where somebody is really pushy and driven might not be the best trait. Maybe we need somebody to be the leader. Maybe it creates problems. But I wanted to mention, you brought up, the thesaurus or whatever you're using. There certainly are many, many, many books about theory and many things that talk about how to do it. But if you take many of them and you compare, you will find they hit a lot of the same points, and they maybe have slightly different labels.
It's all the same thing, but called different things by different people.
Exactly. And I think that's because, the nucleus of truth is in story. And before anybody had even Aristotle's Poetics, people told stories, and they realized what people responded to around the campfire. And story emerged organically. We went on the hunt, and there were problems, and we didn't know if we were going to survive, but clearly we did, because we're back here for the campfire. But story emerged organically, and over time the things got identified by people trying to decide, like Aristotle trying to decide what make good poetry and good drama and everything. So I think the bottom line, probably any book of theory you get a hold of, there's going to be some value and some truth, because there was organic storytelling before those labels came along.
And of course, everything mileage will vary, because each character is going to be as unique as each person writing it.
Exactly. And everything is going through our own filters, and I think that's definitely helps us make unique characters, is that we have all had different experiences. Brent, thoughts on the nucleus of a character and where you start building?
I think the way I do it is, and I've got a background, some comics background, but more like short story and film script. Pretty much what I do is I'll think of, I even hesitate to call it a plot. It's more like a scenario. Like for Kalis is probably my best example. What happened if an astronaut went to another planet and got powers and then wound up back here? What would he be all about? That's my scenario. But then I start, from there, I start really trying to play around with who would be, this is going to sound goofy, who would be the best character to be in that story. And I use my film background a lot when I'm thinking of characters, because frankly, a fun game that I like to play is think of any movie that you really enjoy and think of the main character and think why that main character is the best character to be in that movie. Like, is there a reason why when Ripley faced off against the alien queen at the end of Aliens, well, what if it had been Linda Hamilton from The Terminator, or Joan of Arc, or why did it have to be Ripley? And then you start thinking, well, because of who the queen was, but also because of who Ripley used to be and the journey she had to go through. And so I really start trying to think through who would be the best character to really actually say something. And then I have to ask, well, what is it I want to say? And a lot of times what I find is when I'm building a character, I want to be able to sum that character up, and even just one or two words. So Scott Anderson Kalis is he is powerless, even though he has powers. He's powerless because he can't go back where he came from. I wrote a short story about a woman sheriff in Florida who has to get the truth out of a suspect. I can sum her up as she is an outsider in the town that she is the sheriff of. I wrote this a short story about a kid in a group home. The main crux of his character is he is unloved by anybody. What does that do to him? If he had a mother, it would change the entire story. But it would not only do that, but it would influence his character in any number of different ways. And I didn't want to tell that story. So if I can sum up a character very succinctly like that, then I can go from there and do all kinds of complicated stuff. And by then, I feel like I know who I'm dealing with. And then I'm happy to basically jack him up real bad. So.
I thought of the film Unforgiven when you were mentioning, why is this the perfect character? And that's, of course, the movie where Clint Eastwood is the gunslinger Will Money, and he has lost his mojo, essentially. And you think about how little story you would have there if he was at his peak and was totally competent at the beginning of the story. And it's much more interesting that he is, trying to run a farm and raise children, and he doesn't have the strengths he once possessed, and he's got to find them again. And of course, it's deconstructing the Western, but also just a great journey story because he starts with much that has been lost. So interesting things to think about, and an interesting approach. Why did they do it this way? Why is this property that we find memorable this way? Scott, and guys, shout out if I'm putting anybody on the spot, shout out. But I was going to say, Scott, next you've got some characters in development. Where do you start at the writer's drawing board, if you will?
I can't say I have a formula yet. For Steam Patriots, Rory and I came up with the idea for the world, and we had the United States in the late 18th century, and then we tweaked something. So we thought, well, who would be a good protagonist? And so we thought it'd be interesting for a young person, and then we just took what effect would the world at that time have on this person who it's in turmoil, and there are loyalists and there are people rebelling, and who would be important in his life? Well, we gave him his father, and he's got a brother, and they are opposed to what the United States should be doing. And so he's got to, okay, I understand that, and I understand this. And then there are people that want to fight. And so as a young person, he has to balance who he wants to please, because he's looking for an affirmation for himself. And then, but then he's got this special ability. And that, again, him being a young person, he's got a bit of hubris, and he doesn't handle things well. And that causes problems down the line. So we started with a story world, and fit the character, kind of like what Brent was saying. So that's how I came up. That's how we did Steam Patriots. And then I've got another story percolating where we did start with a character, and then whittled it down to what would be the best world
to put this character into.
Exactly. And so I guess my answer isn't succinct or clear, but
it depends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've heard, and I think every writer's approach is going to be a little different. And I had occasion to, in a radio show podcast, pose a question to the British mystery writer Val McDermid once, and I asked her about creating characters, and she said, well, often I think of the situation and then work backwards and decide who would be the appropriate character. She has I believe it's her book. I believe it's a place of execution, and it has to do with a person executed in Britain before capital punishment was eliminated in Britain. And there's a town with a secret, and a journalist is her lead character. And there are traits. I don't want to give too much away about the book, but there are traits about that journalist that matter very much to the time of the story and the secrets of the town and everything, and they interconnect. And so I think if it's a really compelling world or story idea, sometimes working backwards is what's effective. And again, as we're saying, it's a little bit of it's knowing the theory so well, are being such a strong observer of what works, that we just know how to apply it, or we develop the creative muscles and reflex in such a way. Curtis were here because that's what martial arts is, but we develop the creative reflex to figure out what we need at a given situation. John, thoughts on building a character starting out with the foundation, or how to get started?
Actually, you kind of stole a lot of what I was going to say, so it's nice to know I'm not the only one. But similar to, Scott, similar to what Brent said, I've kind of always gone along more successfully with having a story idea, a story pitch, knowing what the story is, and then have the characters come into the story organically. Sniper and Rook, my main guys and gals here, I first created them as characters. I had designs in my head. My good friend and I sat in the basement of my main college building. I told him what to draw. He drew it out for me. And then I had an idea of what I was going to do with them. And I ran it past the guys at the comic shop I was working at, and they ripped it apart. It was horrible. Like, Sniper was an actor, and he saw somebody committing a crime, so he shot the guy, and that's how he got the name, and he hated it. And yeah, it was stupid. It was really, really stupid, and it should be lost to the ages. So when I wanted to start doing spy political stuff, I was like, okay, that's where I put them in. That's where this team is. I had, when we were doing the video the other night, the one-on-one, behind me was Sight and Scope, and I'm going to turn. So Sight and Scope are kind of the anti-Sniper and Rook. Where they came in, when I was originally creating Sniper and Rook's backstory, after having the political intrigue and espionage going on, I had their origins. Very definitively a place and time with some real world events. As the book finally got published, it would have made Sniper and Rook too old. So later on, I'm like, okay, as I'm coming up with the baddies for Sniper and Rook, I retooled their original origins to kind of go along with these two. So again, it was, driven by a story. A friend of mine, Mike Kasinger, and Mike hit me up on Instant Messenger a couple of years ago, and he said, hey, store I work at, or the store I go to, they do something for Free Comic Book Day. Do you want to do a short story? It's about steampunk this year. And I know nothing about steampunk. I wish I knew Scott at that point, let me tell you. Because I'd be like, tell me something about Steam. And so in chat through Facebook Messenger, I'm like, okay, I don't want to do much about Steam because I don't know much about it. But what about if it's like an alien who has Steam technology and he's, bringing a bad guy back like a bounty hunter and crashes on Earth, and that's how the technology makes it to Earth. And that's how Mady the Steam Maiden was born, because she found that technology. And the guy that was being transported is the Loch Ness Monster. So I got that one in there too. And then for my other main character, Ripper, he actually goes back to a short story I wrote years ago. Character had a different name, and then when he first appeared in issue 7, that's when I finally got the visuals in place with him. My friend Anders Eriksson did that, for me. He did some great design work, and that went back to the original story, not so much character. So when I try to write a character first, I'm not so successful. But once I have a story idea, things start falling into place as to who needs to be there and how it best fits.
I think for my upcoming, coming soon to a Silverline Kickstarter near you, my project, Friar Rush. Friar Rush, I got the idea first from a line in a Encyclopedia of Esoterica or whatever, that Friar Rush was a 15th century demon, or earlier even than 15th century, but a demon who tempted men of the cloth. And I was intrigued by that. And I thought, well, what would happen if that figure were brought into the modern world? And who would he want to influence? Well, he would want somebody with a mass audience so that he could do more damage. So a televangelist would be who he would want to manipulate. And I thought, who would be a good protagonist to try to deal with this figure? And the figure that emerged was a character named Jake McGlover, who is a reporter, but he is a failed seminarian. He wanted to be a priest and change the world, and some things went wrong, and he wasn't moving fast enough to fix the wrongs of the world. And so he left the seminary and became a reporter, where he could, try to right wrongs and everything with his pen, if you will, and kind of became a nice challenge for Friar Rush, and the two of them nice antagonists for each other. And I think whichever way we come about it, if we apply what we know about human nature, what we know about writing as well, and just try to make sure we're texturing things in the right way, that winds up being meaningful in the long run.
Tonight's episode is brought to you by the Silverline merch store. Would you like to get cat or mouse on a mug? I know I would. Go to the Silverline store.
And there is a new a new mug up there of Peter Mantis, one of my characters as well. So definitely go to the Silverline store. We had Tim. Can you see? See questions on YouTube now? We have Amy Stefani had some questions for John.
They're a little weird. Let me get this pulled up real quick. I was going to.
I see them now.
Okay.
I have two questions for John. Number one, since Sniper and Rook are a team, do you plan for them to develop and evolve as a team or separately? We'll take that one first, John.
The answer is yes. So they've been evolving as a team since issue 1. Issue 1 actually started off showing that there was some friction there, that there was some reason for it. Sniper kind of, deep down, he's like, is it because I know she really is better than me? She's definitely the smarter, more capable of the two. He's a little bit more of the brawn, and kind of my dumb side comes through on that character, but like the lovable one. So they've been working together and growing as a team. There was something that happened with the last issue that is going to keep him out of the action for a little bit, where she's going to be going on some solo adventures, things of her own that's going to help her grow, and kind of build up her support system as well. So there'll also be future things about him as well too. So yes, the answer is both. Growing together as a team, because it is a relationship. It is your partner. They've got each other's backs, trust each other with each other's lives, but also who they are individually will definitely be a part of the future series as well.
Cool. And the second question, question 2, is it easier to write character development for Sniper and Rook or Jack and Rebecca?
Oh my God. That's a great question. And it's almost like it was fed, because I was going to get to that. So when I first started writing Sniper and Rook, it was writing as Sniper and Rook because it was about the spies. But as I just alluded to, and we may get to this later on, whenever I write and create a main character, there is part of me in that character. So Jack is more of my fun-loving side, my goofy side, my not so serious side. But with Rebecca, her her personality is like the focused, determined, cool under pressure type. That's kind of where some of me comes through on that character. So I found over the years, after writing this series for as long as I have, I find myself writing them more as Jack and Rebecca than I do as Sniper and Rook. If you read through the books, they're out of mask more often than they're in mask now, and it's just a natural progression because that is who they are. They've really taken on their own lives, and it's been very easy to write to who they are.
Cool. Nice thoughts. And thanks for the questions. We certainly are happy to take more as we go along. Well, during the break, we were talking with Tommy a bit. I read an interview with the mystery writer Robert B. Parker, who has now passed away, but read an interview with him from a few years back recently. And he wrote, of course, the Spencer series of novels about a Boston private investigator. But a very successful and long-running book series was made into the TV series Spencer for Hire with Robert Urich, and then into some TV movies with different actors. But he went and he spoke to a class at Boston University or somewhere, and he talked about how he worked, and the teacher told him later that, well, what you told them is everything I've told them not to do. And riffing off of that, I think it was William Goldman who said nobody knows anything about making movies and making good movies. And often, we say these are the rules, these are what we should adhere to. We must, as Michael was saying earlier, sometimes you're asked to state the theme before you start writing a paper in school, and that's the right way to do it. And we're saying, well, sometimes theme emerges. A lot of room for debate there, but Tommy was saying his approach was different in crafting characters and getting started. Tommy, tell us what you were telling us while we were on the break.
No, it's
your approach.
Yeah, I was just listening to you guys, and you have all of the these, I don't know if that's the correct word, but all these technical ways, all of this ways that you're coming up with the characters and stuff, but maybe it's just the subject matter that I write. When I do my own comics, they're more kid-friendly kind of stuff, so they're more simple for the things that I end up drawing for myself. Now, of course, when I, do work for everybody else, it's whatever, I'm inking, so I'm not really have anything to do with the story. I'm just inking the, what's been given to me, or if I'm drawing something, it's something that somebody else has already written. But when I do my own stuff, it's it's kind of, I just have an idea of a story, and it's usually kind of a simple story, and I just kind of just make it up. I usually have a couple of characters that are always in my books and stuff, and if there needs to be a new bad guy for whatever reason, I just I figure out what the bad guy needs to be, and I just simply kind of just make it up. So when I'm listening to you guys, I'm like, maybe I'm just doing this wrong, but.
We were saying the terms, I think, emerged from NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month or whatever. But the terms plotters and pantsers emerge from that. And plotters outline heavily and know the story before they start. Pantsers sit down, start writing, and making it up by the seat of their pants.
Well, I do know what the story I want to tell, but as far as like one of the things that I mentioned to you guys, if there is the kids that are in the the cafeteria and one kid is stealing the other kid's milk or lunch money or whatever, I don't really, the character that's stealing all the stuff, I'm not really going into the detail. I don't need to come up in my mind why he's doing it other than he just wants to steal his stuff. I don't need to know, in my mind anyway, the way I write is, the background of that character. Like, is his parents, is he live in an orphanage and he has to steal the money because he can't afford anything, or is he just trying to be a bad guy? I don't know.
Sometimes a bad guy just needs to be a bad guy.
He just tell you a bad guy. So generally my stories that like, I got a bad guy that needs to be doing something bad. I just make him doing something bad. So maybe it's really shallow, the story,
but you said they are a little bit more youth oriented or kiddie.
Very much. When I do my own stuff, it's more cartoony, more.
And so I think considering who your audience is a factor too, and maybe a story for young readers is not going to need to do as much of that. Although maybe there's another story to be told about the character that's stealing for a driven reason or whatever.
Or maybe I'm just a bad writer. Maybe that's what it is.
Well, I think again, we all wind up doing the same work, and maybe we get the 50 questionnaire and we sit down, we answer all these questions about a character before we start, or we kind of internalize that and it all works in our heads or whatever.
It's like the motivation that you guys talk about and stuff. It's like I really don't come up with that until I need to. Yeah. So is that a bad thing? You tell me.
I don't think it necessarily is. The end product is the ultimate determination, I think.
Right.
But I think if it gets in there ultimately, whether you did it on paper ahead of time or you weave it in. If you weave it in, I think that's probably good. Joe Lansdale, I was on a panel with Joe Lansdale once, and I don't remember who he said it to him, but he talked about sometimes I just sit down and I write, and the story comes out, and a guy told him, he goes, well, here's what's going on. Your first draft is your outline. It is a very, very, very detailed outline. But that is your process, and it's what gets things on paper. But I think it's good that we do in the back of our mind, if we're not going to be outliners, that a character flaw is meaningful, how the character relates to the plot is meaningful, and I think deep down we all know those things because we've read. So I think everybody here has read tons and tons and tons of stuff. And the more you read, the more of that you absorb. And then and whether or not the labels for it, if you've observed enough that you need that antagonist at a certain point in the story.
I'm definitely going to think about some of this stuff a little more after listening to what you guys have
I think
said.
It also comes a lot from your writing background. I know for myself, and also probably Sid, and I don't know what it is, but my first published works were contemporary literature, so it wasn't so much explosions and tights as it was a man sitting at a kettle reaching apotheosis. And one of my very first published works was just a man sitting working on disassembling a service rifle, and then he has a reflection, and that's the end of the story. So that is entirely character. There is no room for plot in that story. Someone paid me for it, so I'll take it. But now moving more into comics, I started studying some of Benjamin Piercy has wrote on the subject, because he had the same trajectory. And he's saying all good stories have a helicopter crash. And in comics, that is a literal helicopter crash. In literature, it's a figurative, and that's the moment of apotheosis where the character's brain explodes. And so it's just taking that moment and putting it into the physical. But my background there is entirely what developed my process. Whereas someone who started working in the physical helicopter crash, they're working from that to the other direction, not coming from that direction there.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and
from the character study side, Tommy's very shallow. What he's calling shallow characters is good to study because a lot of times you've distilled them down to just the archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
I heard somebody say that SpongeBob covered all the vices or sins. He of pride and greed, and they fit those. My daughter watches Peep in the Big Wide World or something like that, and there's one bird who's just annoying and selfish, and he's like your mooch buddy, that never brings his wallet. That guy, that's a character. Adventure Time. That's a fantastic cartoon, I think, because Finn does the right thing all the time, and stupidly so through most of it. And Jake, his dog, is usually saving him, but he's also lazy and selfish. So the characters that come out of kids stuff, I think it's great. And you could take any kid's story and, depending on the reading level or the audience, expand those out. But a 6-year-old doesn't necessarily need to know the motivation behind the bully. A bully's good enough, but you could build off of all of those.
Build off, and it's how deep do you want to go, and who is the audience? There are a lot of things to consider, if you're going to drill down.
I would also add that one of the main reasons why I build so much into my characters, Tommy, is because I don't know how to draw. So I have to justify my existence somehow.
I appreciate y'all being nice.
I will say too, Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451 and many short stories, Something Wicked This Way Comes. Bradbury chose not to study writing theory because he thought that his creativity was intuitive, and he didn't want to mess it up by studying theory. So there are a million different theories, and there are a million different approaches, I guess, and there are many successful writers practicing each way. Some outline heavily, some need to outline heavily, some do it the other way. We have talked about character flaws, and Brent, I know you're going to be leaving us, but did you give a lot of thought to flaws and developing flaws for characters in crafting Kalis and doing other work?
Actually, my main character, Scott Anders, has a pretty big flaw, which actually surfaces gradually, and we're not far enough in the series for people to know exactly what I'm talking about. But I had to know what it was about him that made him do and choose to do stupid things that are bad in order to get what he wanted. And the answer is one of his flaws is that he, what am I trying to say? It's that he doesn't know how to let go and realize that he doesn't control everything around him. And as a result, when he screwed something up in the past, he is now driven by the need to try to fix it. And that will cause him to do things that will get progressively worse for everyone involved. And I know that's a common theme in film, especially the idea that the control freak has to learn how to let go. And that was pretty huge for me in Kalis. So
reminded me of Anakin, and we saw what happened to him.
Yeah.
It's that Sandman.
But I better run. So guys, I had a great time. I'll catch you next week.
Well, that gives us a perfect point to stop just a moment for an art break. I said we were going to do art breaks tonight, and see, Michael has some work on the screen here, and Alex had a sticky note up there. I missed it.
Yep. We're currently on Alex's screen on the stream.
Okay. Can we? Alex, can you tell us what you're working on tonight?
Yes, so I just finished a page on Cat and Mouse, so now I'm going to be working on just like a character profile / character pick, character design or something.
So kind of getting the basics, the basic shape of the head and everything down first.
Correct, yeah.
How much as you're creating a character on paper, how much information do you need other than what the character looks like?
If it's a new character or I mean, this isn't a new character I'm drawing, so the character, the actual like person behind the mask, I've drawn him before, and the mask he wears I've drawn before. So right now, since I already know what both those sort of look like in my mind, I'm just kind of sketching out the pose and building upon that and building until I can start penciling some of it.
Interesting. Can we look at what Michael's working on? Because that's going to segue into something, a character flaw thing I was going to say. There we go. Can we cut over to that? Yeah,
we're on it. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Michael, tell us what you're drawing here. I know, but others might not.
I'm currently working on a page for something big, which is really big, and so it requires a lot of things and details into it. So I've been the Monday night I did a little bit on page 8, but I kind of came just to take a break from this page right here.
And you have a lot of architecture that you are working in here, as well as characters and things.
Yeah, just trying to create an environment.
Yeah.
As best as I can. My buildings are not great. That's also something I'm working on. But just trying to create the environment and what's going on. You have a couple bits and pieces of disasters and stuff in here. So.
There is a previous story, something big, for something big called the Scary Book, that and there were disastrous events, and so those are reflected in this world. But this is a noir story, and so often environment in noir is a part of the storytelling, and this is the urban. And the darkness of the urban environment often is a component of noir. And so we definitely see some of that here and see the urban world as backdrop. Something big is the story of Phil Chandler, who is the guy in the hat there at the left. And he's a private eye character, private eye parody character. And he was a supporting player in the Scary Book. And there are some character aspects to Phil that will come out, but he was kind of comic relief in a comedy in the Scary Book. And I realized I needed a different character. And Tim, do we have the character of Hadley that we can throw up?
I believe so. Oh, hold on. Yeah.
I realized the character that would be more the lead of this story about Phil would be his assistant. And we're riffing off a couple of things. We're riffing off of The Big Sleep, hence the big title, playing with Raymond Chandler's hard-boiled detective story, The Big Sleep. And Hadley is actually the younger sister of Phil's client. And I realized it would be interesting if he had like a skateboarding heroine paired with this traditional hard-boiled private investigator, and Hadley sort of emerged. And I think one of Hadley's flaws that will certainly emerge as the story develops is that she is very self-absorbed, and she will become more selfless as the story goes along. And she is a rich kid. But is unfocused, and of course her father, realizing this, has cut her off from her money, and so she can't get the custom skateboards she would like and everything, and becomes Phil's partner or assistant for that reason. And again, I don't know that I sat down when I was writing the outline and said, what will her flaw be? But as I started developing the plots and everything, and doing a little bit more with Hadley, I realized, well, these would be true of her. If she's a rich kid and she's always had everything, she would be self-absorbed, would be focused on her skateboarding. And so a lot of subtext developed as I wrote more and more. So not unlike, I guess, what Tommy is talking about that there. I guess maybe I just thought about it a little more.
See, you wrote your story like I do mine. You just
Sorta,
needed to
sorta.
come up with something, and you came up with it.
Yeah.
Sorta.
Ah.
Yeah. And again, everything is, I think, an amalgam of all of the theory we're talking about. But of course, in a comic too, there's not a lot of room for even the amount of material you could put into a novel. So a lot of this has to emerge while you're telling a story and a bigger story arc in 22 pages. A lot of the time, the character traits have to be conveyed visually. And do we have there should be a page from the scary book.
We do. Let me pop that
Yeah,
over.
can we bring that up? And the
little big
lead of the scary book is a bookstore owner named Marty Applegate. And one of the things about Marty, I decided at the outset, Marty is kind of a straight man in a really bizarre world because he gets a hold of a spell book that was never supposed to be at large, and it falls into the hands of all of these different sorcerers. And so all kind of magic is touched off, creating a lot of upheaval. But Marty, I always felt like Marty, even though extraordinary things were happening, would be a very calm character and an observer and kind of a thoughtful character. And again, you have to do a lot of that with a few words and some visuals. And so these 3 panels really kind of, sum that up with Marty. We've seen him react a little bit more extravagantly in some earlier panels in this story. But here we have this guy, this mummy that has been brought to life, probably slipped out of a museum or something. And Marty is leaning outside his bookstore, and this guy comes along, this mummy comes along, talks to him, and you can see in the 3rd panel there, he doesn't really react too much to this mummy walking down the street suddenly. And that was how we tried to convey the degree of calm that Marty displays. I've been watching Ozark, and that's really the Jason Bateman character, who is also named Marty, remains very calm when all these murders are happening around him and everything. And I think we kind of anticipated that kind of behavior with Marty Applegate. But again, visuals are the biggest tool we have, and of course, artists are the focus of comics work. And I wanted to talk to, because Mickey has talked in the past on past shows about taking things into account in coloring a comic. Mickey, are there things that will determine how you color a panel, like how angry a character is, or how
Yeah.
a character is acting?
Yeah, time of day, lighting, everything. If the guy's angry, the more angry they are, you go with the dark purples and darker shades of red. If they're more happy, well, then you use brighter colors, mainly like primary and such.
Mm-hmm.
So even like the character designs I'm doing, they tell me like this guy's evil. So we went to dark reds, purples, real dark shades of gray and such like that. The heroes are more, they're the good guys. So use mainly the primary colors to bring them out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it depends a lot on the person's character and everything.
And sometimes I think we see anger. You may go almost with a total red in a anger panel or whatever.
Monotone.
Yeah. So certainly many of the tools in the character arsenal are visual, and if we can take the colors into account, take the character behavior, how a character reacts to something, often can tell us a lot about character. Other thoughts on that, guys? Other ways visuals can convey character for writers, it's putting that into the description that the artist is going to draw.
Well, sometimes you can, if we were talking about the characters that are mad or upset or whatever, you can soften the line or draw things a little more angular if you're trying to be more expressive. Is that where you're trying to get at?
Yeah,
Kind of.
and also from your perspective, because you're drawing and writing, and of course, for those of us that are just writing, what the artist will then draw, I think some of that characteristic can go into the script. Thoughts on that? Any incidents like that in Steam Patriots, Scott?
Action is really I think what your character is, what your character does. So the showing them in action, I try to describe exactly what we want. And I've gotten a lot of good work from David Mims, where he's taken what we've said or what I've written, and he's kind of turned it around and given a great expression to convey a feeling or a mood way better than. So it's like I want to take all the dialogue that I had and throw it out and just leave it with his visual, because it tells so much of the story. And so I like what he does, and it's been a great. I don't know him from anywhere. I liked his art, and so it's been a great relationship that he takes my idea and then with the scene and the framing, what's the word? The close up. What's the word I'm looking for? how close up, or the background.
Like the shot.
Exactly, the shot. Yeah, and he's had a great eye for that to tell so much with one panel. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I think you did, and some of the thinking that goes into that, and again, all of the arrows in the quiver. Those of you that had me as a teacher, I often would say we've got these arrows in our quiver or these tools in our toolkit or whatever. What do you guys think about captions in comics to convey character and using those? For a while, it seemed like everything was almost totally visual. We maybe see some movement back toward captions, and we see more in the modern era. We see a lot more first-person captions, so it's almost like we're in the character's mind. What do you think of? Do you like?
You mean
that?
Different than a thought bubble kind of a thing? You're talking about
I think thought bubbles are. Do you think thought bubbles are almost passé these days?
Yeah, I almost feel like you never see them at all. I'm currently writing a noir thing, not to get too revealy, but so I'm using a ton of first-person captions because that's how we're getting like the hard-boiled detective monologue, or the it's kind of the Sherlock Holmesian breaking down of what he's observing at the moment. Whereas 20 years ago, that'd be in the thought bubble, I'd almost say, but I haven't seen them really since the 90s.
Yeah, I think by and large that they have faded, and the first person caption has replaced that. And you can look back at really even the 70s, we started to see some of that, and as the convention was developing, you would even see like a head and shoulders of the character in the caption. So Michael, I can remember this from Vampire Tales, Michael Morbius. You'd see a little tiny Michael Morbius head in a caption that was his first person narration, and then probably even quotes around it, and then that was jettisoned and it became just the captions. But those do give us tools to kind of look through the character's eyes, and I think we can use almost a novelist tool there, point of view narration in those captions, and we can reveal a little bit more about character using those tools, and certainly an avenue to consider. Guys, how much do you think character names matter? We certainly have a lot of alliterative names in much of comics literature, if you will. Do you give a lot of thought to the meaning of a name when you hang it on a character?
I mean, like a superhero name, or
I'm thinking
Joe. You know,
maybe alter ego name, but sometimes names have meanings, and sometimes I will look up like baby name meanings and say, what does this name mean, and think, is this an appropriate name for this character? Do you think that anybody do that? And anybody have thoughts about that?
I've spent 30 minutes looking up translations of German names for a project before.
I think it can be meaningful to, and sometimes it's just it's fun, and it's just for fun. Hadley Hellstab again maybe is not the meaning of her name is not as important as the alliteration, I think, although the family name is important in the storyline. And Phil Chandler is, of course, a tip of the hat to Philip Marlowe and Raymond Chandler, who created Philip Marlowe. So sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's meaningful if we look back to the name origin or whatever.
Stand by for heavy rolls on Twitch. Says they like names that can set the time period.
I think that is a great point.
Yeah.
That is a great point. And one thing I will look at is what names were and you can do this you can do this on the internet now. You can say, if this character was born in 1991, what were the popular names? And what would this character name be? Regions, I think, can matter as well. So there are going to be certain types of names in New Orleans and in Louisiana that are different. Not always, because I know people with Louisiana surnames from Maine. But certainly if you're writing a story set in Louisiana, there are names that you want to take into account. Anne Rice, of course, writes many stories set in Louisiana, and the names will be regionally accurate. In being from Louisiana, and see, Michael is from Louisiana as well. They're names that if you are from Louisiana and you read Anne Rice, you realize, okay, yes, she got that right. That would be a New Orleans name, or that is absolutely a Natchitoches, Louisiana name that she has picked out there. And certainly that may matter a little less in a comic, but in a novel of the texture that Anne Rice is writing, that's going to be significant, I think, to take that into account.
I think also one of the favorite vices of the writer is if you have a character that exists just to die, and you have a particularly bad interaction with someone one day, names can be interchangeable.
That can happen too, and happily with comics. At some point, we're going to do an episode where we talk about comic scripting, I think, and comic script writers have a freedom that film writers don't. You guys, some of you guys work in film. Brent has gone, but Brent certainly works in film. But a film format is dependent on being 1 minute a page. So the format is set up so that dialogue, description, whatever you're writing, generally equals a minute a page. Comics, we're concerned with what's going on the page, and if it takes 2 pages to describe what goes on 1 page, that's okay.
And the budget too, I guess.
Well,
you could, there is no budget with the comic. So
there's certainly sometimes you write a panel description though, and you want to stick a note on it, just saying like, "I'm sorry, dude."
Yeah. But I was going somewhere with that, and I got lost. But anyway, now I remember what I was going to say. Sometimes character names that are incidental will be shorter just because it's going to take up less space. And I think there was a character in Breaking Bad, and Vince Gilligan said that for a long time he was not named, I think, but his name was Ed. just because it was short and it wouldn't cause a line break, and allowed them to stick closer to keeping pages tight or whatever. Speaking of killing characters, have you ever created a character that you hated to kill but had to kill? And I've certainly done that in novels.
Yeah, I've done that novel, not in a comic yet. I don't know if Scott has a direction of that in his book. But by the first novel I wrote, you always gotta fit in the obligatory father or grandfather stand-in character, just sort of the good mentor. And I took a lot of inspiration from sort of barrios and sort of lower income Hispanic neighborhoods, and there's one character who's a lot like someone I actually knew. I'm like, this is a beat where he dies, he needs to die, he should die. I don't want to, because it's someone I feel like I know. But it's a moment where you just make someone who's so true to life to someone you actually might recognize, that when good storytelling demands that they die, you're just kind of looking at that like, I'm not sure how I feel about this, because I feel like I'm murdering someone I know.
Yeah, yeah. It can be painful, and like you say, especially if you have invested traits from somebody you know, that can happen. I think it does speak to, maybe that is a good character if you have invested that kind of reality into the character, that you feel it. I had a character I have a novel called Nelfs. They're half gnome, half elves. But one of the things I wanted to do was throw a death in to just show the severity of the situation that the heroine was facing. And so there was a writer character in there that was more or less me, and the story dictated that he die, and was hard to do, but he had to go. And it was also at the time totally unexpected that this guy was gonna buy it, because he really looked like he was going to be the love interest in a story. Now, the book was written under contract. It was published and everything. It didn't affect it getting published for me to do that, but the book was entered in a contest after it was published. And the person judging the contest was just aghast that I killed that character off, and that there was not a totally happy ending in that story. And I think, well, I don't think you've read much horror fiction, or if this is throwing you curveballs. But
it's like in the Game of Thrones, right? Ned, the father guy. You thought the whole time that, well, it's been out for a while, so I'm not spoiling anything. So if anybody's mad,
spoilers for a book that came out 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, the book, yeah, that's for sure.
You had ample opportunity. Yeah.
You've seen it. Yeah, no, I didn't read any of the book. Yeah, but you're talking about the character dying and stuff, and all of a sudden he gets his head chopped off, and you're like, they just killed off the best guy of the whole thing. So, but it was really good. So like with your story there, that it was time for the guy to go. So
we certainly didn't. I mean, people had read the book, knew it, but they didn't know it until they read the book.
Some of my buddies that had knew what was going on, they were waiting for that scene to come up because I kept talking up. Oh, he's so cool. They're like, he's fixing to die.
It was certainly then, of course, touched off the rest of the story.
Sure did, yeah.
But Game of Thrones is an anomaly in a lot of ways, and I think it was especially because it is a bigger total arc. For early on, especially, it was kind of defiantly not satisfying. Often we would see characters get some redemption that we would be expecting to come to a bad end or whatever. Eventually we get to a point where really bad characters kind of get what's coming to them, but then, of course, the ending of the series spins it again.
It's a shame
And,
the TV show never ended.
Many people, were very disappointed. And again, the
Well,
series
maybe
got ahead of the book.
maybe if we ever get the books, maybe
Yeah.
it'll be
It'll
a
be
little better. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
I think
like
that
Lost,
does
right?
speak to something that writers need to be thinking about always is what equals a satisfying story arc for this character, and if I'm going to do things, if I'm going to spin it a different way, what foreshadowing do I need to put into place if this character is going to meet a bad end or anything like that. Certainly, a death of a character can be meaningful and can serve a purpose in a story. And while we've talked about character a lot, I think ultimately story, is the ultimate dictator. Where is the story going? What's going to happen here? And building something that's ultimately satisfying to readers is certainly our goal. Any other thoughts, guys, on crafting characters from the artists or the writers in the room, or the writer artists?
I was going to say
Tommy?
Yeah, you were talking about the characters dying and stuff. Look, going back to the stories that I write with being kids, a lot of the characters I use, here's a problem I have. A lot of the characters I use, or pretty much all of them, are friends and people that I know and stuff. I try to include them in the book, so it's kind of easy for me to write them pretty much. But when I make them a bad guy, I've had some of my friends go, "I'm not a bad guy. Do you really think I'm a bad guy?" And I'm like, "Well, somebody's got to be the bad guy, so your character is the bad guy." I've had people say, "Can you just take my character out of the book then, please?" And I'm like, "Okay, all right." And then I don't. But
that is the danger, I think, of dealing with putting friends into stories. Kinky, I don't know Kinky Friedman personally, but I actually used to know a good friend of Kinky Friedman's, and he would use a lot of his friends as characters in his mystery novels. And if you've never read them, Kinky Friedman is the detective in the books written by Kinky Friedman, who was a singer first and became a mystery writer. But one of his high school friends was the victim in his very first novel, Greenwich Killing Time. And he gets killed.
You killed me off.
Yeah, but his friend was really thrilled about it because he goes, "Yeah, you killed me on the first page, but I'm in the whole book because they're talking about me the whole time."
Oh,
even though he was the victim, he was on every page. Scott, you had a thought. Did we cut you off? Or?
Well, no, I was just going to say, with the whole creation of the characters, like I said, with Tommy's basic characters, and then what we mentioned about NaNoWriMo, about having something to start with. And I don't know if we said it that everybody could hear, but I think Rory said on the comments about building a D&D character, and Dungeons and Dragons, they give you I've got my player's handbook here. You get your alignment, but then your ideals, your bonds, and your flaws, and that can guide all of your characters' decision making. And there's another book that I read. Actually, it was another role playing game. It didn't get much traction. I think it was called Hill Folk by Robin Laws, and he took the RPG down to the character level. And I think it'd be cool if when I write an adventure for D&D, I try to add his rules. And he has there's another book called Hamlet's Hit Points, and he puts together the ups and downs of character interactions within the beats of a movie, and he gives the character every interaction between characters as a petitioner and a grantor. The character is always wanting something, and whether that's your main character or a periphery character or the villain, always wanting something from somebody else, and how they're going to get that thing, whether it's candy, sex, whatever it is, that give and take. I think that that guides the character. So you start with that foundation, and then you go on to what he or she wants.
What they want and what they're trying to get. That's a great point. It's kind of an omission, I guess, that we haven't touched on that. But yeah, what your character wants is really at the core. And what does Will Money want when he leaves the farm? He wants money ultimately, and usually a character is going to want something.
Robin Laws is the author of. I didn't look at it. I think it's Hill Folk, and then Hamlet's Hit Points is a neat little book. It dissects Hamlet, Dr. No, and Casablanca, and on how he makes a little equation, and it's kind of neat to see if it's an up or down in the storyline for the main character, good or bad. It's a little more than that, but
well, and certainly as he's alluding to there, when two characters want different things and they start to butt heads or conflict with each other, or where there are nuances to what other characters want and need, that's where drama begins, and that's where conflict begins, and very, very important aspect to take into account. And maybe that is something that we should write down or have in our heads at the beginning. I think the bottom line as writers is the more of that kind of thinking we can absorb, and certainly the more we read and take note of what we're responding to, the more we develop that creative muscle, or we think about the things that we're going to pour into the story. And whether we do it on paper carefully in an outline ahead of time, or we just pour it in as we write, if it is drilled into our brain so deeply that it's just part of what we do, that I think leads to successful.
Over the weekend I attended a Tor conference where a bunch of writers with Tor books had a conference online, and one of the panels at the end, one of the panelists made a really good, I feel it's a really good observation, is once you decide as a writer that you want to get published, every book becomes a craft book. Sort of everything is your dissecting of what you like about it and how that applies to your own writing, even if it's just subconsciously.
That's a good, that's a good rule of thumb, and I think is very true. And John has left us, but John, one time, and not unlike some of the things Tommy has said, John said once that he had done some things and he didn't necessarily know the label that we were throwing out, but he knew that component because he had read and he had loved the stories he had read, and he had was building on that experience, and everything that had come before was filtering through his imagination. Well, guys, I guess we will start to wrap up. We are past the bottom of our second hour, which is always a good time to start winding down. We will sign off by telling everyone where to find us. So, Tommy, you are on my couch now first. So, where can people find you online?
It's just Thomas Florimonte on all the different social media places. You spell my name Florimonte. It's Florimonte. I know it sounds kind of funny to say, but if you look at it, it's spelled just the way it sounds. So. Facebook, Flor Monte. The Oz, I guess, maybe not. But anyway,
Flor, just think
Flor Monte. Yeah. So and on Facebook, and but go to infernostudios.com. That's got links to all of my books and all the stuff, and then of course everything that the new project here will be coming out here pretty soon. I just had a milestone. I finished inking the first part. I'm calling it part one, but the first book is going to be 48 pages, but I've done with the first 24 pages of it already. So we're on the tail end of that. So I think that's going to come out in September, I think is what Roland's saying, for the Trump's book.
Cool.
Yeah.
Tim TK, where can people find you?
I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TimTKWriter. I am here on Twitch at AgroBacon, where I might not be live tonight. I might be writing, but there's a possibility. And I am also on TikTok at Tim Doesn't TikTok, where I need to post more stuff.
Okay. Scott, where can we find you online?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Steam Patriots.
Excellent, excellent. And Alex, do we have a sticky note of where to find you, or?
Yes, let me pull it up real quick. But I can just tell you, it's going to be for Instagram and Twitter, my name, and then plus a 2 for Instagram, and then a 25 at the end for Twitter. Facebook's just my name. It's Gallimore, Gallimore. That's the last name. First name's Alex. Pretty basic, but yeah.
So search for Alex and friend him or follow him, as the case may be, and you'll see great artwork posted from time to time. See Michael Lanning, where can we find you online?
On Facebook, see Michael Lanning. Same thing for Instagram, and you should be able to find it on Twitter. Although on see Michael Lanning, if you drop the G at the end and put a 2, you'll find me quicker. So
okay. So and we will have links in the show notes on YouTube and in some of the various platforms where you might be watching us on demand. And I am Sidney Williams, Sidney with an I, and you can find me at sidisalive.com, my home base. And you can find me on Fiverr, and I do some comics editing. So if you look me up on Fiverr and you need an editor, I have some reasonable prices there. And you can buy me a cup of coffee on Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. So anywhere you want to look me up. I'm also on Instagram under my name, and on Facebook is Sidney Williams Books. So love to hear from people. So certainly reach out, say howdy, if you will, appropriate with my Southern accent. Well, with all that said, I think we are wrapping up tonight. Thanks if you're joining us live. Thanks if you are joining us on demand. Thanks. Our next show will be Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. A different group of writers and artists will be on here with Roland Mann, the Grand Poobah of Silverline Comics and self-admitted comics cheerleader. So Roland will be hosting again 9 p.m. on all the same platforms, Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern with Roland Mann. And
who's going to be the one-on-one on Monday?
I'm not sure.
I know.
It is me. So.
Oh!
There you go.
Comics youngest pencilist.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Alex, it's going to be Alex. Great.
Yes.
Great. Well, that will be Monday night. So Sunday night full show, and Monday night a great. I know it will be great one-on-one. Certainly, you can watch all of these on demand on the Silverline YouTube page, on our Twitch page, and on the Silverline Facebook page. Please find us on Facebook and like us, join the Silverline Comics group, and chat on an ongoing basis. And good night, everyone. We will shut it down, and we will see you here next week at 9 on Wednesday.